This is SpaceTime, Series 28, Episode 117, for broadcast on the 29th of September 2025. Coming up on SpaceTime, Stardust, older than the solar system, found in the asteroid Bennu. Strange and mysterious features discovered in Saturn's atmosphere. And the Parker Solar Probe undertakes a close flyby of the Sun. All that and more coming up on SpaceTime.
Welcome to SpaceTime with Stuart Gary.
Scientists have discovered minerals older than our solar system, embedded in the asteroid Bennu. The findings, reported in the journals Nature Astronomy and Nature Geoscience, could help explain how planets like the Earth first formed. The new research provides the most comprehensive analysis yet of samples from NASA's OSIRIS-REx mission, which returned more than 120 grams of pristine asteroid material from Bennu to Earth in 2023. One of the study's authors, Nick Timms from Curtin University, says the findings show the asteroid Bennu is composed of ancient cosmic material, including stardust, which is older than the solar system itself. The analysis indicates that the 490-metre-wide asteroid's parent body was built from a rich, varied mix of organic compounds, icy materials, silicates, and grains from ancient stars, preserved in near-perfect conditions for more than 4.5 billion years. Tim says some of these materials formed in other stars long before the solar system existed. Others formed in the outer solar system, and still others were condensed close to the Sun before being carried outwards. This means that asteroid Bennu's parent body must have been formed from dust from distinct regions of the solar system, or at least the protoplanetary disk which eventually would form our solar system, and then likely travelled from an orbit beyond Jupiter towards the inner solar system and the main asteroid belt. Sometime later, the parent body was destroyed, and some parts were reassembled into Bennu, a rubble pile asteroid which eventually drifted into its current near-Earth orbit. Tim says Bennu helps astronomers understand how planets form and how key ingredients, such as water and organic matter, may have reached the Earth.
Some of the work involves looking at the small components that make up asteroid Bennu, and it's basically quite a buffet of all sorts of different particles from early in the solar system, and even some tiny particles that formed before our solar system formed as well, which tells us about whereabouts in the solar system the parent body for asteroid Bennu was formed. And also we've been finding out a lot about the conditions on the parent body for the asteroid as well, and how water was very instrumental in changing some of the components of the asteroid and altering things at conditions roughly around room temperature on the parent body for asteroid Bennu very, very early on in the solar system. Long before it was smashed up and reassembled into a big rubble pile, asteroid Bennu is today.
So what can you tell us about the environment Bennu was formed in?
Well, the asteroid was, or the parent to the asteroid at least, was kind of amalgamated or accreted from dust particles and ice particles from different parts in the solar system very soon after the Sun formed. And before really the planets got to form into the planets that we know today, we think there were lots more protoplanets or baby planets which started to accrete from the dust in the solar disk in the early solar system. And some of those survived and accumulated today to what we know as the planets, and some of them didn't. And the parent body for asteroid Bennu was one of the early ones that didn't survive. But we found out some of the components were formed in the inner solar system, and some of the parts of Bennu, the Bennu parent body, were accreted in the outer solar system. So there was lots of movement and mixing and migration of material in the early solar system to make up what we now see as asteroid Bennu.
So how did you determine that? Was it simply that you looked at the composition of the water itself to see how much deuterium there was in it, or how is that done?
So what we can do is look at, there are two things. really, two main ways of studying the asteroid material. One is to make measurements of larger pieces of it and look at the bulk geochemistry of those fragments. So it sort of amalgamates everything together to get a sort of a bulk view of what the average of everything is in all of the bits inside the asteroid material. And the other approach really is to look at the individual grains and individual crystals and fragments and particles within the asteroid material and try to fingerprint where they're from using a combination of geochemistry and isotope geochemistry. And it's the combination of those things that have helped sort of identify all of these different weak components. For example, the asteroid contains just a few percent of types of minerals which have escaped hydrothermal alteration of some of the original bits, if you like, some of the original fragments. The anhydrous silicates, a group of minerals which include things like olivine, which you might know as peridot, which people put on jewelry, and a group of minerals called pyroxenes. Now, we could analyze those crystals individually and measure their oxygen isotope values, so the proportions of different isotopes of oxygen, so oxygen 16 and oxygen 17, oxygen 18, and that allows us to interpret what their sources were. And some of them was really, really primitive material, primordial material that formed right after the formation of the sun, some of the earliest solids to form in the solar system. And some of those minerals have actually been processed, they've been remelted again, and are fragments of what we call chondrules, which have been subject to sort of flash heating events in the early solar system as well. So that's just an example of how we can fingerprint some of the origins of some of the minerals in Asteroid Bennu.
Some of your colleagues were also able to find material in there that was from beyond our solar system, grains from Stardust from interstellar origins.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So a small team, a couple of groups around the world are able to look at the composition of really, really small particles that are very rare. They only exist, a few tens of parts per million in the asteroid, which is a very low abundance, but they're very conspicuous because they have extremely different isotope ratios in several different types of isotopes, including nitrogen and oxygen and so on and so forth, that really indicate that they can't have formed from the environment of our sun, and they have to have formed in different star systems. So they were inter-solar system or galactic dust that was around at the time of the formation of the solar system, and then they got accreted or basically absorbed into these protoplanetary bodies. They got mopped up as well, and some of them have survived the alteration, so we can analyze those and see back to what kind of star systems that they were formed in. It just gives us an indication of what sort of cosmic dust was around right at the beginning of our solar system in the environment that our sun formed in.
And one of the other surprising finds was that Bennu was a sibling to Ryugu, the other recent asteroid visited by a spacecraft for sample return.
Yeah, that's right. So the Japanese Space Agency, JAXA, also returned samples from an asteroid before. We had samples from the asteroid Bennu. The asteroid they returned samples from was called Ryugu, and both of the two asteroids are very, very similar in all of the types of particles that make them up and their isotopic and geochemical compositions. And so in a sense, they're almost like sibling asteroids that have happened to have come in from the asteroid belt to near-Earth orbits and have had very, very similar histories and probably formed in very, very similar regions of the solar system originally. And both asteroids were chosen by the different space agencies because they were very carbon-rich, and we wanted to sample some carbon-rich asteroids to look at the organics in both of those. And it turns out that they are very similar, which is quite phenomenal, really.
I remember when the OSIRIS-REx mission landed on Bennu to gain samples, they discovered just how fluffy and little density it had.
Yeah, so when OSIRIS-REx touched down on asteroid Bennu, after it sort of hung around in orbit with it for the best part of 2 years, and they were taking incredibly detailed images of the asteroid so they can map it in detail, figure out a really good place to touch down, grab a sample and jet back off again. But I don't think anybody was expecting how soft the asteroid was. I've heard my colleagues describe that touchdown as almost like a probe sinking into a bowl of popcorn. It was, that soft, and they had to initiate thrusters actually to get the probe back out again before the spacecraft jetted back to Earth. So it was a really kind of exciting and tense moment and all of it captured with amazing video footage as well from the spacecraft that was relayed back to Earth. And it's really quite incredible. It was really good to see when we were part of the mission, and that happened live as well. It was really, really exciting times.
That's Associate Professor Nick Timms from Curtin University. And this is SpaceTime. Still to come, strange and mysterious features discovered in Saturn's atmosphere. And NASA's Parker Solar Probe undertakes a close flyby of the Sun. All that and more still to come on SpaceTime. New observations from the Webb Space Telescope have uncovered mysterious, never-before-seen features in Saturn's atmosphere. The strange, complex structures of beads and a star-like pattern are unlike anything ever seen before on another planet. The findings were presented at the Europlanet Science Congress Division of Planetary Sciences Conference in Helsinki, Finland. One of the study's authors, Tom Stallard from Northumbria University, says the findings came as a complete surprise. Stallard says astronomers expected to see emissions in broad bands at various atmospheric levels, but instead the observations showed these fine-scale patterns of beads and a star that, despite being separated by huge distances in altitude, may somehow be interconnected and may even be linked to Saturn's famous North Pole hexagon. He says these features were completely unexpected and at present are impossible to explain. The patterns were discovered during a continuous 10-hour observation period using Webb back in November last year. The authors were focused on detecting emissions by a positively charged molecular form of hydrogen, which plays a key role in reactions in Saturn's atmosphere, and so can provide valuable insights into the chemical and physical processes at work. Webb's near-infrared spectrograph allowed the authors to simultaneously observe hydrogen ions in the ionosphere, 1,100 kilometres above Saturn's cloud tops, and methane molecules in the underlying stratosphere at an altitude of around 600 kilometres. In the electrically charged plasma of the ionosphere, the authors observed a series of dark bead-like features embedded in bright auroral halos. These structures remained stable for hours, but they appeared to drift slowly over longer periods. And around 500 kilometres lower, down in Saturn's stratosphere, the authors observed a strange asymmetric star-shaped feature. This unusual structure extended out from Saturn's north pole towards the equator. But only 4 of the star's 6 arms were visible, with 2 mysteriously missing, in the process creating what appears to be a lopsided pattern. Saturn's upper atmosphere has proven to be incredibly difficult to study with missions and telescopes to date due to the extremely weak emissions from this region. But Webb sensitivity has revolutionized science's ability to observe these atmospheric layers, in the process revealing structures completely unlike anything ever seen before. The authors mapped the exact locations of these features, finding that they overlaid the same region of Saturn at different levels, with the star's arms appearing to emanate from positions directly above the points of the storm cloud-level polar hexagon. Now, this all suggests that the processes that are driving the patterns may influence a column stretching right through Saturn's atmosphere. Stallard thinks that the dark beads may result from complex interactions between Saturn's magnetosphere and its rotating atmosphere, potentially providing new insights into the energy exchange which drives Saturn's aurora. The asymmetric star pattern suggests previously unknown atmospheric processes operating in Saturn's stratosphere, possibly linked to the hexagonal storm pattern observed deeper in the atmosphere. Tantalizingly, the darkest beads in the ionosphere appear to line up with the strongest star arm in the stratosphere. But it's not clear at this point whether they are actually linked or whether it's just a coincidence. While both features could have significant implications for understanding atmospheric dynamics on gas giants, more work is needed to provide explanations for the underlying causes. So the authors are now looking for additional time on Webb for follow-up observations in order to further explore these mysterious features. And with Saturn currently at its equinox, which only occurs once every 15 Earth years, the structures may well change dramatically as Saturn's orientation to the Sun shifts and the Northern Hemisphere moves into autumn. This is SpaceTime. Still to come, NASA's Parker Solar Probe undertakes a close flyby of the Sun, and later in the science report, A new study has confirmed that people who remain virgins into adulthood tend to be less happy. All that and more still to come on SpaceTime. NASA's Parker Solar Probe has just completed its 25th close approach to the Sun. This latest encounter matched the spacecraft's previous record distance of 6.2 million kilometres above the solar surface. The probe checked in with mission managers at Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory in Laurel, Maryland, 2 days after the close approach, using a series of coded beacon tones, indicating that its systems were all operating nominally. Parker was out of contact with the Earth and operating autonomously during the close flyby. A more detailed download of data will take place when the spacecraft moves further away from the Sun, out to an area where the star's intense ionized plasma radiation atmosphere will have less of an effect on communications. During the flyby, Parker also equaled its record-setting speed of 687,000 kilometers per hour, a mark that, like the distance record, was set and subsequently matched during close approaches on December the 24th last year and on March the 22nd and June the 19th this year. Parker will now remain in this orbit around the Sun and continue making observations. During these solar encounters, Parker's 4 scientific instrument packages are gathering unique observations from inside the Sun's atmosphere, the corona. The flyby allows the spacecraft to conduct unrivaled measurements of solar activity as the Sun goes through solar max, the peak of its 11-year solar cycle. The data being gathered includes observations of the solar wind, solar flares, and coronal mass ejections, which are all critical to help astronomers better understand geomagnetic storms. These drive high-energy space weather events, which can increase radiation exposure for crew in orbit on deep space missions and even people in high-altitude aircraft. The events can also damage or destroy spacecraft, or at least shorten the lifespans of satellites by causing Earth's atmosphere to expand, thereby increasing atmospheric drag, resulting in orbital decay and forcing spacecraft to use more fuel in order to maintain their correct operational orbits. Solar storms also interrupt navigation and communication networks here on Earth, and they can trigger power grid overloads, which can cause terrestrial electricity blackouts affecting wide areas on the ground. This is SpaceTime. And time now to take a brief look at some of the other stories making news in science this week with the Science Report. Well, in case you haven't worked it out yet, a new study has confirmed that people who remain virgins into adulthood are on average more nervous, more lonely, and more unhappy. But the good news is they're also likely to be more educated and less likely to use alcohol or drugs. The findings, reported in the journal PNAS, analysed the traits of some 400,000 British virgins between the ages of 39 and 73, as well as some 13,500 Australian virgins aged 18 to 89, in order to look for similarities among those who go well into adulthood without ever having had sex. The authors found common genetic variants explained about 17% of variation in sexlessness in men and 14% in women, although they stress there is no virgin gene. Links between genetics and behaviour are too complex for that. But they did find that physical traits appeared to be far more strongly linked to virginity in men. Men were also more likely to be virgins if they lived in areas with fewer women. A widely reported study on apple cider vinegar and weight loss has now been retracted. The retracted research, reported in the British Medical Journal, suggested that a small amount of apple cider vinegar every day may help overweight or obese people lose weight and reduce their body mass index. The small clinical trial received widespread international attention when it was first published, and it continues to be referenced by the media today. The retraction comes after concerns were raised by critics of the study, which was then referred to statistical experts to evaluate its reliability. Not only were the statisticians unable to replicate the results, but multiple analytical errors were also found. The British Medical Journal also notes that there were irregularities in the data set and the report. The authors say the errors were honest mistakes, and they've agreed with the decision to retract the study. Scientists have confirmed a new species of theropod dinosaur. They're the ones that look like T-Rex. Harquinraptor sully was 7 metres long and weighed over 1,000 kilograms. The fossil was found at a dig site in South America with a crocodile leg bone in its jaws, suggesting it may well have been a top predator when it was roaming the lands, and in this case the shoreline, some 70 million years ago. A report in the journal Nature Communications claims the new species is part of a family of dinosaurs with powerful arms and large claws which once lived across South America, Asia and Australia. An investigative reporter with the New York Post has destroyed the credibility of several paranormal true believers inside the US government. Tim Mendham from Australian Skeptics says the cutting takedown exposed several rogue military officials and a few Washington politicians, some of whom even believed they were being haunted by UFOs, ghosts and monsters from Skinwalker Ranch.
There was quite a good video that came out recently, actually on New York Post. There's a fellow there who does a lot of investigations of the paranormal, and he's very good. He does investigate properly. He looks at the evidence and goes to places to see what happens. Anyway, he was somebody who was investigating in this recent video UFOs and certain claims by UFOs that have had a high profile lately, and also UFOs which often appear at a place called Skinwalker Ranch in the US. Now, the UFO claims, first of all, a number of people appearing before Congress, putting their hand up and swearing this is true, that they were told by someone, the brother-in-law of someone else, that the America and the governments are covering up UFOs and that they're holding craft and this, and the news is going to come out there any day now, which is something they've been saying for 70 years, literally 70 years, that any day now the evidence, the convincing evidence is going to come out. It hasn't. There is nothing substantial in what they've said at all. No evidence. Nothing. Then you move into the Skinwalker Ranch, which is this place in America which was supposedly a centre for UFO activity, not to mention ghosts and all kinds of monsters and various things.
Have a place in Native American folklore, don't they?
Yes, it's nice of them to appropriate that term and apply it to a place which therefore gives it the imprimatur that it's sort of an ancient heritage, strange things going on. Skinwalkers were supposed to be someone who could take on the form of an animal and therefore move unnoticed. So they named this ranch Skinwalker Ranch. But it is this place supposedly full of all sorts of paranormal encounters. It's got TV shows they run. It's got a lot of publicity. The guys running it obviously make a few bucks out of it. And
it's
this fellow
like
who did this...
Bigfoot, isn't it? They keep searching for these mythical creatures and they never quite get there in time.
They just missed it. It was here yesterday. Yes, but I mean, this is the thing about this Skinwalker Ranch is it has a lot of followers, high-profile followers, and people who you would hope would know better, including a lot of American politicians, some of whom went to Skinwalker Ranch and then claimed that they were attacked by a ghost or something, which then followed them back to where they came from. Skinwalkers in the Midwest somewhere, and these ghosts followed them back to the East Coast and are still haunting them and annoying them. And you think, these are people making policy decisions about the most important things in America.
I'll let you in a little secret. Politicians really aren't that bright. Believe me, I know. I've met a lot of them.
They're as easily fooled as anybody else, and there's still no evidence of these things being there, of attacking people. It's all gossip, rumour, publicity, you name it. None of these things have ever shown any good evidence for them, but that's never stopped them being popular.
That's Tim Mendham from Australian Skeptics. And that's the show for now. SpaceTime is available every Monday, Wednesday and Friday through Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcast, Pocket Casts, Spotify, Acast, Amazon Music, Bytes.com, SoundCloud, YouTube, your favourite podcast download provider, and from spacetimewithstuartgary.com. SpaceTime's also broadcast through the National Science Foundation on Science Zone Radio and on both iHeartRadio and TuneIn Radio. And you can help to support our show by visiting the SpaceTime store for a range of promotional merchandising goodies, or by becoming a SpaceTime patron, which gives you access to triple-episode commercial-free versions of the show, as well as lots of bonus audio content which doesn't go to air, access to our exclusive Facebook group, and other rewards. Just go to spacetimewithstuartgary.com for full details.
You've been listening to SpaceTime with Stuart Gary. This has been another quality podcast production from Bytes.com.